Wolfgang Steve here, and today I wanted to make a case for what some people may be surprised why I would make a case for it, especially in these times in which we live, these very challenging times, which is the case for a personal God. Now, before you think that I've turned a corner here, I'm not going to make any claim that there is a personal God, because I can't point to anything and say, yes, this is the God I'm talking about. I cannot quote Thomas Aquinas and say, just because Thomas Aquinas said so, therefore, ... or any sort of scripture or anything like that. Although these things can be helpful for us to help, learn about our internal life, if you will, the life within ourselves. But if I'm going to talk about inner genie power, I have to be honest and try to make the bridges and the connections to what many people have found a great degree of value in the past. And before anybody would want to declare me as some sort of a heretic, I'm not trying to put down anybody's faith, belief, what it works for them or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to make the case for the power, in my understanding of it anyways, of the power of having a relationship with God. Not just a concept of God, but a relationship with God. And I think this is part of, aside from the universal ethics that Christianity has displayed, other ones have that. Buddhism has universal ethics, as an example. But what Buddhism doesn't have, my understanding of it anyways, is a personal God. And I would say these are the two significant, very hugely significant aspects of Christianity, which I am becoming more and more an admirer of, the tradition of Christianity. And there'll be other things that I will, discover along the way probably. But those two things, I would say, the universal ethics and the personal God. And the reason I think it's so important is because we, as human beings, like I say, I try not to disconnect, as some people would call, the known reality and the unknown reality. I try not to put those two categories in place, because if there's an unknown reality, well, then I don't know it, But I try to connect the experience of the inner world with what I'm experiencing, like my inner subjectivity and my thoughts and feelings and whatever. I try to relate them to what I'm experiencing in the world, walking around, sitting in this old pickup truck or whatever it is. Try to make those connections, and then it becomes more real, it becomes more tangible. And if we have a God that's along the lines of Islam, for example, where it's basically God the Father, it's this ethereal, all omni everything God, but which is basically unknown and is, kind of vengeful and so on. I mean, I don't claim to know much about Islam, but certain religions have this concept of God, but it's so distant and so grand that there's never this real exchange, even Old Testament God, right? But along comes Christianity, and you have this, probably others as well, but I'm just using, like I say, Christianity is the unique blend of universal ethics and personal God. Perhaps this other, like there's another one example of Buddhism has universal ethics in the precepts, but no personal God. And maybe there's others that have personal God, but no universal ethics. But when you have them both, of course, we see, I think, the results, which is Christianity and the success of the Western world in so many ways. And I'm not talking about, of course, there's downsides of the West, but I'm talking about the pluses, right? The Christian world, I say. And the reason I say that the personal God is so important is because that's how we experience, once again, coming back to the known world as we have it. We interact with each other personally, right? And the word person comes from the face of, or the mask of. What you see, what we look at somebody, we recognize them, not by their clothing, because people can change their clothing every moment or every day, but we recognize them for their uniqueness. So you have this unique character, right? And of course, the personal God that Christians have is not only unique, but it's perfect in virtue, right? So you have not only this relationship with somebody who you can really love, just like you can love a good friend, but you also have someone to aspire to. And what also is interesting about this is that personal God lives within your very, very being. It's, when you think about it, it's an amazingly profound idea. It's amazingly human in a way, because after all, we are biologically animal, and probably mentally animal as well. But we're sort of like animal plus 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 in a way, because we have this unique ability to not only, invent things that can go to Mars and what have you, but also to abstract and make wonderful music and conversation and, this system that we're conversing on. We have all of that. But of course, when we have all of that, we also have the ability to create amazingly motivating and empowering processes of being able to connect with what we can basically feel as a strong relationship with a personal God. And this personal God is in some ways very human, understands humans, understands us, has the challenges and the struggles. At least in the story, you have this Jesus character becoming man and therefore experiencing the struggles and the challenges and the pains and so on, man. So this personal God understands our life and therefore is very empathetic towards our life. It's like we have, and I think this is very empowering in terms of our strength as well, because if we have as our ally, not only beside us, but within us, this God who is basically our complete essence. So it's like we have as our basis, as our fundamental grounding, we have as that God, but at the same time we're not God. It's a clever, or sort of a unique space to get into, which is that we transcend the ego when we understand what we fundamentally are is Christ. That's what is fundamental. That's what fundamentally animates us. Yet we as the individuated man on earth are not that. It's extremely humbling in a way, but it's because once we see that as a person of God, we see it as like there's two aspects of ourselves. There's the divine, this perfection, this love that understands us, cares for us, is guiding us, is animating us, and yet at the same time we go about life as this bumbling character who's always trying to catch up in a way, or to aspire to be like that great power within us. Isn't that an amazing thing? Imagine if we had in the world a friend who could be beside us, who knew everything, cared for us, understood us, and we could access the power of that individual to be able to not just to be able to fling shit at those who we don't like or whatever, although that would be kind of interesting at times, but to be able to access the power of that person to empower ourselves, to become better, to access the reservoir, if you will, within us that is coming from there, that is sort of dedicated for us to access, if you will. That to me is the sort of value, all of those things together is the value that people have developed in terms of being able to teach us about how to get access to this idea, this experience of personal God. I think it's amazing. I'm not claiming that this is true or anything. I wish I could. I honestly wish that I could say, yes, I've had this experience of God coming out to me or whatever. And I wish I could say that with complete conviction. All I've got, though, is to translate or to be able to express some of my thoughts on this. And hopefully it's helpful. Because in the times to come, and in our days, maybe even now, there are hardships. So any way that we can find to get beyond those hardships and take action constructively along the lines of freeing our inner genie or inner power in some way, recognizing that it's really not us in a way, right? Because if we think that it's us, we become bloated as an ego. If we can access that at more and more often and more precisely, we become more effective at what we do, and it'll help us immensely to not only find peace in our lives, but to become more constructive in what it is that we do in all areas of our lives. So let me know what you think. If you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, and share. Share it out if you can, and also comment in the box below. It's very, very appreciated. By the way, wonderful community starting here, and it's great to see that. Hopefully this is helpful. Talk again soon. Bye for now.